Let's talk about Joppa's stream from last night. So Joppa's stream last night was about, I don't know, 2.5 hours long or so. So, good amount of information. It was a very discussion heavy stream. There was a lot to talk about, a lot of changes happening. So kind of buckle up a little bit. I'm going to kind of go over the things quickly, and then I might discuss a few of these because they are pretty important. So there's armor updates coming for the monk specifically. He showed those off, but armor updates coming for everybody. So graphic wise, so one of the monk changes is this right here. So I'll kind of zoom in a little bit, but that's one of the monk changes. There's another one around the 2-hour 28-minute mark if you want to go check that out. But this one, very very Raiden-esque. Kind of looks neat on the monk. So check that out. New visuals are coming. No longer are we going to be wearing just brown stuff all the time. Some more cleric changes that are coming in. Cleric changes with Cloak of Light using Celestial Power. That is going to be changing. He talks about that around the 11-minute mark, where right now with Cloak of Light and the Celestial Power, it's very difficult to accumulate Celestial Power, and Cloak of Light is still a very lackluster ability, and it requires 250 of the Celestial Power. So he's making some changes to that. That should be coming in, I'm guessing, the next patch, but should be coming in soon. So be looking for those. Basically what it does is it makes it easier to accumulate the Celestial Power, and also Cloak of Light is now going to heal for more. I believe it's now healing, on the example that he used, healing for around 20, which is a good bit more than what it heals for anybody in the game currently. And then also it reduced the duration of it from 60 seconds, I think, down to 20 seconds, but now it does more healing per tick, which is a 30, whatever it was, 3-second per tick or whatever, and it's doing like 20 per tick. So that's happening. There is, and this is where the big discussion is going to come in. We're going to talk about it a little bit more throughout the rest of this, moving towards a single class of NPCs. So right now in the game, we have two classes of NPCs. You have the normal mobs, which are these right here, and then you have things that people are calling the chevron mobs, or the group mobs, or elite mobs, or whatever you want to call those. So they're talking about getting away from that. Now, before we all freak out about this, because every single time I've heard this conversation come up, people freak out and they're like, oh my God, you're taking away all the group NPCs. The game is going to be a solo fest, etc., etc., etc. That is not the case, and we will talk about that a little bit more here in a moment. But the idea is to kind of get rid of the chevron NPCs and just modify all NPCs across the board, give them the abilities appropriate to where they're located, like if they're down in a dungeon. Also, more named NPCs. They want to add more of those into the game, and smaller loot tables. That was a big discussion at one point. People were talking about how hard it is to get certain items, like the Blade of Carnage, which was a big one that they talked about during the stream, and how difficult it is to get that item. And part of the reason is because the Wyken, who drops the Blade of Carnage, has 5 different items that it drops, and the Blade of Carnage is on the rare side, if not the rarest item that it drops. So that's why that particular item is so difficult, because you could be fighting that mob for hours or days or whatever, and you could be getting 4 of those items and never see the one, because you have basically a 90% chance to get one of those other 4 items compared to the Blade of Carnage, which is the one that you might be looking for. So that is something that they are looking at changing in the future, reducing the amount of items on mobs, and then increasing the number of named, and then adjusting the drop rate of various items. We talk about that a little bit more somewhere down around the 2-hour, 3-minute mark, wants items to be rare, but in some ways items are too rare right now and they shouldn't be. So down the road, he does want ultra rare items where there may only be 1 on the server or 2 on the server. Super ultra rare items that are hard to get, he does want those. Right now, though, those items are not supposed to be that way and should not be that way, but they are being looked at. So just because they are super rare now doesn't mean it's going to stay that way in the future. So there we are. That's where we're at with that. There is an issue with strength. This was a discussion around, let me sit here and rest. There is an issue with strength that he did talk about at the hour 9-minute mark. Currently, strength has a chance to roll additional damage. It is not supposed to be a chance to roll additional damage, but it's supposed to always be additional damage. So every single time you melee attack a mob as a melee character, or any character in this game that is doing some sort of melee attack, auto attack damage, it's supposed to just increase your damage based on your strength every time. Right now, it's like, hey, we're going to roll, and if you get, above a whatever, it's going to increase your damage one time for that one swing. That is not intended, and they are going to be looking at ways to fix that. Also, it's not mitigating properly. He was basically saying that it's mitigating, it's doing the roll, mitigating the damage, and then sending it out or something, instead of doing the roll, getting the damage, then mitigating the damage. So it's doing it out of order, and they're going to be looking at that as well. So that this will effectively make some of these bigger changes where you go out and you find a really good item. For example, you go out and find the Rip Smack. It's doing 12 damage as opposed to your 5 damage weapon that you were doing before. It's going to feel a lot better when you go up by 7 damage per swing. You're going to start to feel that. That is at least the idea going forward, and they are going to be looking at that. Again, our 9-minute mark. Getting back into, let's see, I kind of want to skip down a little bit, and we're going to talk about the Fiery Avenger. This is going to be the Paladin only weapon that he kind of showed off a little bit. So I want to zoom in here so you guys can see it. This is kind of like an epic weapon, kind of in-game, very hard to get weapon. I kind of just wanted to show it off. He could not equip it because he's not on a Paladin. He says it doesn't look very good as far as the graphics are concerned right now. But this is a main-hand greatsword, so it'll be a two-handed weapon. It's doing 40 damage, 3.2 delay, 4 strength, 36 parry rating, 27 haste rating, and Paladin only. So some of us did comment on the stats saying, wow, that's really, really good stats. It's way better than anything in the game. And Joppa's comment on that was basically, those stats are not good enough based on how hard it is to get this weapon. So he does want to increase those stats, make them better, because the difficulty of that weapon is very, very hard to get. So I kind of wanted to just kind of show you all a little bit of that. So really cool stuff coming in that way. Also, clicky effects right now, he talked about this very briefly, but clicky effects are not only going to be on items. I don't actually have any clicky effects on this character, but every clicky effect in the game right now is an inventory item. You right click it and it does something, but he does want to have them actually on gear in the future, and he can't really do that at the moment because the way, you right click an item and it basically equips it if it's an equipable piece of gear. So they're trying to work out, a ways to make that happen. All right. So now this is where we're going to go jump backwards a little bit. I know we're jumping around a lot from the hour 16-minute mark all the way through about the 2-hour mark. That entire time we're talking about a lot of different things with the con changes and the group NPCs, the group enemies, all of that kind of stuff happening, including the chevron, all that. So I'm going to kind of go over this as best I can. They want to add in the chill factor. So we're going to go back to the chevron mobs, and they want to remove that tag basically off of mobs and make every mob the same, because right now a lot of the mobs in the game have way too much mitigation, way too much resistances. They require certain debuffs to happen on them. They require certain group setups to really make them efficient. Now, can you do those with 2 or 3 players? Absolutely. In some cases you can do it with 1. Necromancers can solo chevron mobs in a lot of cases. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it, but it means that to do it effectively and efficiently, then you need these classes to make it good XP. Otherwise, everybody just goes and does the solo mobs, which is much, much easier to do. So that's the reason for these changes. They also have additional abilities on them. Those additional abilities are very annoying. They can do knockbacks. They can do fears. There's, group wiping abilities that can happen if you don't interrupt them, all of that kind of stuff. So that's where the chill factor comes in. So the idea is he wants to have times for very challenging fights. Like the White Wyvern is a very challenging fight. Agonok is a very challenging fight. He wants to have times where the named are popping and you need to pay attention, you need to focus, and you need to make sure that your group is ready to take down whatever boss that may be, because they're going to have various abilities. But there's going to be a chill factor where he wants people to just kind of relax and have fun and enjoy the game, be able to talk to their friends. So he's taking away some of those abilities or reducing the amount of abilities that some NPCs do. So that's basically where the con changes are coming. Now, this is going to be multiple different iterations over time. We don't know when these are going to start. It's not going to happen in the next patch, but it's going to be multiple changes over time. So we need to give them time to use the phrase that I don't really like to use, but give them time to cook this, okay? Like, let it cook. And then once we're finished with the whole thing, we'll take it out of the oven. We'll see how it is. So that's where they are with that. Possibility of removing a number of debuffs. So right now, a lot of players, part of the problem is we have to put in a group of different players, 6 different players, so that we can have debuffs on the mobs. You need to have, up to 4 different debuffs on a physical mitigation mob to be able to hit certain mobs. Like if they have armored and they're a chevron mob, their physical mitigation is way up here to where physical classes are doing literally 1 damage per swing. And you need to have multiple different ways to reduce that. And there's up to 4 right now to reduce that down so that they become easier to hit. That requires to have at least 4 different players in your party that can do physical mitigation, right? That's what you're trying to say. So they want to reduce that to where you don't need the 4 different players. You're only going to maybe need 1 or 2 of those, to where basically they just don't stack anymore. But, and this is where it gets a little bit better, worse, depending on you. They want to add in the abilities on certain characters to reduce those mitigations, those the physical mitigation or the resistances on a mob more than those debuffs do. So that is the idea. Like Enchanter will be able to reduce resistances. Right now, they can do it by 20 resistance across the board. That might increase to 30 or whatever. It's going to go up, and then the debuffs that certain classes do is going to stay the same or maybe go down a little bit so that they're not equal. And having an Enchanter in your party will be better than having, say, a Summoner in your party doing a debuff that reduces resistances. Okay, so that's basically where they're going, which would basically encourage you to have, certain classes that are not utilized as much. Right now, the Enchanter is not utilized as much, and hopefully that will bring them into parties a little bit more. In that same note, con changes may be happening in the future, so they might limit. Right now, the range of con is huge, so you have like upwards of 8 to 10 levels of dark blue. Once you get into the higher levels in the higher 40s, that might narrow down a little bit. They're still looking at that. He didn't really talk too much about that in particular, but he did say that light blue mobs are okay to kill. A lot of people have it stuck in their head that EverQuest mobs, you wanted to go after dark blue enemies in EverQuest 1, which was generally the case, and it was the best XP for risk versus reward versus, how time to kill, all those kinds of things. Dark blue was the way to go, and people have it stuck in their head. So one of the things that they wanted to make sure everyone knows, light blue mobs still give a decent amount of experience. They are less than those of dark blue or white con mobs, but they do give a decent amount of experience. So definitely go try those out. Kill some light blue mobs, see where you're at. Now, I can attest that when you get to green mobs, it gets really, really bad. And I would not recommend killing a bunch of green mobs for XP, but I can say that light blue mobs are actually not bad. Dark blue mobs are definitely better if you can find them and kill them consistently with your group, but light blues are okay. With that, he is considering changing the color con system. So like changing dark blue mobs, the suggestion he gave was maybe to a purple. I personally don't like that because it's going to confuse my old EQ brain. But, if they do that, it's not going to be the end of the world. But, some people were like, don't do that. Some people were like, yeah, let's do that. But anyway, there is an idea that they may change that in the future. The last thing that we're going to talk about in this, and this is coming in the next update, is the How Near Cave changes. So this is going to be going kind of across the board throughout the entire game, but they're starting with How Near Cave. They're trying to make How Near Cave more accessible. And I know that is a trigger word for a lot of people, accessible, and people are still probably complaining. Right now in your head, you're thinking, oh my God, they're making Chevron mobs all solo mobs, and now they're making How Near Cave more accessible. Everything in the game is going to become easier, and you're probably all screaming about it in your chairs or on your phones or whatever it is, however you're watching this. But the point is they're trying to make it more accessible. It's not going to necessarily be easy, but it's going to be easier than it was before. You don't have to have the perfect group set up. You don't have to have a static group that knows what they're doing in every single situation. It's going to allow people to pug this game easier. If you don't know what a pug is, it is not a little puppy dog. It means a pickup group. And it's allowing people to get in there, get into Houndier Cave at 3 or 4 party members rather than a full group of 6 to be able to deal with all the different situations. Now, some other changes that are going to be coming to Houndier Cave, making the beginning area a bit more accessible, like I said, allow for more groups to play simultaneously. So basically kind of spreading out some of the mobs a little bit to allow more people to get in there and make smaller little sub camps. Make more camp areas, so more areas that you can actually camp in and sit in, and more like safe areas. So a lot of people go into Houndier Cave, they go all the way down into what I call the ghost room. Joppa, I think, calls the map room. Anyway, the room where the key is up in the little cubby hole in the top. I think we all know what room I'm talking about. People sit in there and they pull ghosts up to that from down the stairs. Another safe area is right before the oh my gosh, what are they called? The Black Rose Guards. Right before that, there's like a little cubby hole you can sit in, and people sit there. So there's not a whole lot of places that you can sit within Houndier Cave and camp, but they're going to be adding some of those in the future, and I think those are going to be added in a lot of other places. Another place that people brought up, me specifically and a couple other people, was the Gadai Fort over in Thronefast. There's just enemies everywhere. They're kind of walking all over each other, and Joppa did say that those are... it is a bit congested in there, and it is a bit challenging. So that is another change that might be coming. Tweaked some levels of the Bloodsick to 16 to 18. So they're going to adjust some of those. And then also he's going to be tweaking some of the named mobs, specifically one named mob, which is the Blood Lich. If you don't know what the Blood Lich is, it's the one where you're going over the bridge and you turn around and you go back underneath the bridge all the way down at the end of the hall. That's where the Blood Lich spawns. Right now, it's a very rare spawn, and it's the one that drops the ring that turns you into a rat. So it's the rat ring. Very, very rare item. And he's going to be changing that in the future, or in the next update, actually, to where it's in 1 hour guaranteed spawn on that particular mob rather than a chance to spawn. I don't know where all my enemies went here. And then spread enemies around a bit. So that is the idea of what they're trying to do. There's a lot of changes coming. So let's not freak out when, those changes happen little bits at a time. We need to wait and see how that's all going to affect it down the road. So that's pretty much the entire Joppa update. Hopefully, I covered everything very well. I don't know if I told you the 1 hour, 54-minute mark is where he's talking about the Houndier Cave changes if you want to go check that out. I think I gave all the timestamp. Anyway, that is pretty much it.